Okay, so we're live and we're on our next episode of Strong Talks with Osteo Strong. And I am so excited today to have our first dynamic duo. Actually, we're talking to two lovely ladies today who are actually, they call themselves biohackers, which is really fun because OsteoStrong, we feel like we're like the ultimate biohack. So it's really fun to have both Renee and Lauren on board today. And I wanted to welcome you both. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to get into some great talks today. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Excited to
thank
be
you.
here.
You're so welcome. So Lauren's actually a corrective exercise specialist, which is really interesting and so ties into the sorts of things that we do at OsteoStrong. And she's a functional health coach, which is great. So maybe you could tell us a little bit. We could start with you, Lauren. I've just nominated you as the first person we talk to.
Perfect.
Like if you would love to, just share some things about your background and what your passions are and a bit about what you do so we can understand how you work would be so much beneficial for us to learn if you could give us something.
Sure. Well, Renee and I both grew up as dancers, so really in touch with the somatic experience being in our bodies, expressing ourselves physically, which of course, led to a lot of injuries and forced us to send our attention onto taking care of our physical body. So I went to college for dance. I wanted to dance professionally. I did dance professionally, but right out of college, I wanted to support my body and make sure that I wasn't getting injured as I went into my 20s. As a teenager, you could do anything. You can fall on the floor a million times and get up and be fine. But even in my 20s, I was already like, oh gosh, okay, I need to stay on top of this. So to support my dance career, I went and got trained to become a personal trainer. Actually, was just an effort to get a free gym membership initially, but I was sort of targeted as someone that maybe could actually just be a trainer. So that was such a gift, and I was kind of spiraled into that world about learning. Deep dive into training and recovery at that time was not really such a big topic. So it was an even further discovery into how does that kind of fit in, because more is not necessarily better.
Right.
And I learned that the hard way living in New York, dancing, working multiple jobs. And I felt really passionate about the training. So I just was always working. Like there was never a lack of work, which I'm so blessed to say, but also like too much. It was too much for me.
Balance.
Yeah. And so I experienced some burnout because I was relying so much on my physical body. And it led me to a place I was performing on Broadway and also doing all this personal training. And I had to take a step back. And so I paused and started doing some education to further my nutrition coaching, which kind of had been seeping in over the years as I started to see more of a need for that and more of a curiosity for this holistic perspective, knowing that being in the gym is not the only variable.
Right.
And so I started learning about functional medicine, functional nutrition, and that includes some lab testing. And that was like the first real deep dive into getting answers about my unique biology and what's happening, because we know there's not one size fits all. And for a very long time, I think general opinion is if you search on Google or read a health magazine, you'll find the answers. And we all know that it's very, very, very not true now. So that was my first foray into actually figuring out, okay, this is what my labs say. This is how I feel, correlating symptoms with data. So I could really start putting together a personalized plan for myself. So over time, that just evolved into more health coaching. I do still do a little bit of personal training, but the corrective exercise piece that you mentioned is based on my focus in wanting to help people get out of pain, to move better, not necessarily just be in the gym more. So certainly we have like a hugely sedentary population, but there is a population that has no trouble getting to the gym and they're just doing too much. So How do
Yeah.
we scale that back? How do we personalize it? How do we get you to just move more efficiently, move better? Certainly, OsteoStrong fits into that category of not adding stress to the body, moving safely. So, definitely in that arena of just getting people to move better and have less pain.
Yeah, I love that. Functional movement, I think, is something that is really underrated. And it doesn't matter if you have pain or, you're really young and got lots of energy and you want to be at the gym all the time. You just need to have that functional movement and make sure that you're doing things correctly. So I love that for sure. Thank you so much for introing you. I could talk to, I said I could talk to you forever. There's so many things we could delve into with that. But I really want to also get to know Renee because
Yes.
Renee has like you guys have similar backgrounds in some ways. You've got some really great synergies, both been dancers and things like that, but then Renee's certified as a nutritional consultant. And I think that's really interesting because that plays into a lot of things. I'm sure you can tell us about that. And then just being a holistic lifestyle coach, because I'm sure it's more than just what we eat, right? So tell us more, Renee. What's your story? Give us some of Renee and what she's been up to and what she does.
Yeah, I mean, so definitely a similar background, as sisters, we're only 2 years apart. So growing up in the ballet world, we had a lot of similarities. And
Mhm.
our mom and dad are both into holistic health, and our dad has really been biohacking since I would say like the mid 80s, possibly. And so we grew up with a lot of kind of biohacking technology. Like whenever we did have an injury from dance, our dad would pull out like, red light therapy or a
Oh,
PEMF
wow.
device.
What?
Yeah.
And this is in the 80s?
Yeah, like
Oh
late
my
80s, early
gosh.
90s.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love
Yeah. So we were always exposed to that. I don't think either of us really understood what that stuff was doing
No,
back then,
it
but
sounds great.
yeah. "Hey, dad, my knee hurts." "Okay, put this on there." "Okay." But now we're really into the biohacking technology much more now. But as I was telling you before we jumped on, to the live is when I was 13, I actually landed a jump in ballet class wrong, and I ended up with 2 stress fractures in my SI joint.
Mm,
I couldn't dance for a year. I was in a back brace. They wanted to do surgery. They wanted to fuse my spine. Finally got back to dance. I just kept re-injuring the same area over and over again. So ultimately I had to stop dancing. So I try to look at this as somewhat of a blessing. I learned a lot about how important recovery is and obviously bone health is. So at the time, I actually had an eating disorder. I was not eating enough. And then I was dancing 3-4 hours a day. So I was so malnourished, which looking back, it's like, well, no surprise that my bones just were so weak and just one jump, boom, that was it. That was it. And so
mhm,
that's why I wish I had something like OsteoStrong back then.
mm.
And, being in New York with all the professional dancers, what an amazing opportunity for people.
Yes.
Um, so that was kind of the beginning of my journey of, okay, I can't dance. Now what do I do? To make a long story short, I ended up going back and getting my master's in nutrition because I was just so interested about, wait a minute, we can fuel our body with food instead of just restricting it all the time. What a concept.
Yes.
And then as I went down that journey, I started to get more into the holistic health side of things. So looking at sleep optimization, recovery, stress management, meditation, how we can incorporate supplements and, Chinese medicine. There's just so many things we can incorporate to make this really a holistic approach.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So now, Lauren and I are running the podcast together, talking about all the biohacks. And like we said before the live, everything from the free biohacks to the fancy tech and gadgets is just a really exciting time to be in the space.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really love hearing about all of that. I think your story would resonate with many, and it actually it touches on some of the things I've spoken with some of our members on, ex dancers, etc. And there's a huge link between eating disorders and bone health and how that can really play into some putting people in a pretty dangerous situation with these weak bones. And that's something that happened to you so young, so you're so lucky that you were able to, I mean, as you said, it's like the pain and that really awful experience has caused you to learn so much and has probably helped pivot your life and
Yeah.
the things that you've been curious about, and you've been able to help people to avoid that or recover from that, or you're able to empathize with people on that, which is just fantastic, and I absolutely love that. So we're about keeping strong and getting strong and all of that stuff with our little strong talks that we've got going on here. And I am so super curious to find out, and because I'm sure you've got a bazillion ideas, but I'm really interested to know, really, even if we could start with what keeps you guys strong, like what would be, I don't know, the top 3 things that you would recommend for others that maybe you feel are really important to you that you do each day or each week that keep you strong? Can you give me 3 per person? I don't know if even 3. Are there more? I'm sure there's
yeah. I can share my top 3. I would say number 1 is just lifting heavy. And that's, also where OsteoStrong can come in. I'm in Las Vegas and unfortunately don't have access to one. But I've used one before when I was in Maryland, back when I lived there. So I would say lifting heavy. Again, as a ballerina, I remember my ballet instructor saying you were not allowed to lift more than 2-pound dumbbells ever. Wow. So this concept of lifting weights until I got to college was just like so foreign.
Wow.
But now it feels so good to lift heavy. And actually the other day, my trainer was like, don't take this personally or in a bad way, but your butt is getting a lot bigger, but I think it's all muscle. I was like, okay, this is a good thing. Thanks. Yeah. So I'm able to put on muscle just by, I think, so 1, lifting heavy, 2, incorporating, certain supplements. I use Urolithin A from a company called Timeline Nutrition, which is showing that it's increasing cardiovascular endurance, also increasing muscular strength. So that's a great biohack. I also use creatine, which I think a lot of people have always thought creatine is like for bodybuilders, but for us women, even just 5 grams a day, we can see a great benefit with muscle. And then protein. Eating enough protein. So I think, especially with like the plant-based movement, I think a lot of people aren't getting enough protein in every day. So something as simple as just making sure you're getting enough protein. Don't overlook that. We need that for muscle.
Yeah.
So those are my top 3.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I'm all about micronutrients and getting all of those happening as well, which is really good to talk about. I think a lot of people are confused about how much of this or that they're supposed to have. So but thank you so much for sharing that. And Lauren, your top 3 would be what? I'm so curious. What would it be?
I'm going to take a totally different approach. I agree with everything Renee said, but just to color in this holistic perspective, she was talking about things that we can add in. And to complete this picture, I think it's important to make sure that we're also reducing any inputs that could potentially work against us, add more stress, hinder our strength building. So top of my list would just be recovery, when my body either just physiologically tells me that I need to do that, or when my data tells me I need to do that. Wow. I think with AI technology and machinery like OsteoStrong, we can see data. We can see when the body's not actually recovered, and so now we have hard evidence that sometimes more is not better. Right. So really giving the body enough time to recover so that you can come back stronger. I mean, I think everyone knows this at this point. It's the recovery where you get stronger. It's not the actual workout. So for not allowing for that proper window. And I think it's different for everyone. And I guess the second piece that will then color that in is knowing your own stress bucket. So like, what is your personal kryptonite? Especially living in New York City, we're surrounded by so many stressors and toxins. So really looking at the body, whether it's through lab testing or just addressing your environment to see what could potentially be hindering your recovery process. So the air we breathe, the water that we drink, the
examples were, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Mental, emotional health, just the thoughts that we experience. And I think being in a city where it's very densely populated, our energy is constantly interacting. So we have to be very careful with our environments. There's so many variables here, but just making sure that we kind of look at the spectrum of stress, because we know stress can be good, like workout is a good stress, but there has to be a balance. And I think I'll just keep saying New York because that's the audience. It's, I think, much more of a challenge to do less than it is to do more. So making sure we're not adding too much stress. And then I think the third one, they all kind of bleed into each other, but I would say making sure that you're getting adequate hydration and minerals. And that goes along with the stress. Like, so many people are drinking plastic water bottles.
Yeah.
So not only is it stripped of minerals, but then you get the endocrine disruptors from the plastics. And then if you're filtering your water at home, like, what kind of filter is it actually filtering what your municipal water system is providing to you? And then it's not just what you're drinking, it's what you're showering in, washing your hands in all day long. So really looking at that, because hydration and minerals is like a foundational cellular status. And without that, I mean, we can't build strong bones, we can't have healthy digestion, and we could get more into gut health, but gut health is super important for bone building.
Yes.
So I think it's just like a larger topic about stress inputs and making sure that you're addressing your unique, I'll just say stress bucket is like a fun word.
Yeah, no, I really like that and appreciate that. I think, I've definitely noticed that hydration makes a big difference in a lot of different areas for a lot of different people. It's probably the one thing that can be universal in my opinion anyway. I've seen people that have worked in the industry and, they've definitely had a big focus on their nutrition and, exercise and building muscle and all of these different things and vitamins and all that stuff. And then I'm just thinking of an example of someone I worked with recently where just by increasing the water and doing it at the right times of the day as well, just making sure that hydration is happening at the right times of the day. This particular client has been able to really not only like lose a bit of weight, but maintain just that weight that he wanted to sort of maintain. So, and he's like, well, I haven't really done anything. And I have been a little naughty with some of the things that I've eaten sometimes. Like, I haven't been exactly perfect. I went from a cleanse and then, winding down from a cleanse, like, what does that look like? And I think everyone's really worried after they do a cleanse, are they going to be able to maintain, and is it all going to, all come back the way it was before, if it's weight or if it's how they were feeling, etc. But he was like, I'm really surprised. Like, I haven't been perfect, but my water levels has been like, they've been consistently higher. So I feel like just hydration is really, really underrated. And I know we all talk about it and everyone thinks they know how much water they're meant to have for the day and stuff like that. But it's something that if we can get that monitored, it's a really good thing to keep an eye on, because it makes huge differences, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's electricity for the body.
Exactly. So like, okay, so big cities, we know what that feels like. A lot of people come from big cities. Obviously, I'm in New York right now. We would love to hear, because I know you guys have got great ideas around biohacking and free biohacks, stuff that are free. I mean, clearly everyone can come to us for a free session, that's fine. But, ongoing, it's an investment. I understand that. And there are other things. You don't just do one thing to be well, right? There's a few things, and we want to sort of practice those things, get into a ritual. I'm sure you've got ideas on that as well. I'd love to hear them. But what would be some of the free biohacks that people can do that are living in a city that really do need to ground and really do need to, get more vitamin D, and really do, what are these things that people can do to really enhance their experience in other areas of wellness, going in with some of the exercise they're doing and the osteostrong sessions and the vitamins maybe that they're taking and the food that they're focused on. Like, how can we help these people with some biohacks that can be inexpensive or free?
Yeah.
Renee, you want to kick it off?
Well, I would say the number one free biohack is getting out in the sun, like you just briefly said. I mean, vitamin D is just one thing that we get from the sun, but supporting our circadian rhythm. So if you can get outside in the sunshine within 30 minutes of waking, it's a great natural cup of coffee. So it's going to increase your cortisol naturally, get you going for the day. But also vitamin D, it's going to increase our mood. It's going to make us sleep better brain function, better energy. Of course, vitamin D, it's going to support hormone production. All of these amazing magical things just from getting out in the sun. Now, I am not an expert as to how to do that in New York City. You two can teach me how you do that in your concrete jungle over there. Las Vegas, it's easy. I go in my backyard or up on my rooftop. It's easy breezy almost every day of the year.
Yeah.
So I would say that's my number one free biohack. So no, Lauren, do you want to chime in on anything as far as getting sunshine in the city?
Well, of course, if you can get your feet on the ground with the sunshine. So if you have a patio, I would say maybe take it to the park instead. Or if you have a rooftop, take it to the park instead. If you open your Wi-Fi on your phone and you have 20 plus Wi-Fi network options, I would walk to some grass until those options disappear, just to remove the inputs to the body, because that's certainly a stress, all of like the electromagnetic interference and chaos that's coming at your body.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting because I'm spending a lot of time in Maryland these days, but I've been in New York for 20 years. And when I open the Wi-Fi, it's like endless Wi-Fi. When I go to Maryland, it's like 3 options. Maybe it's working today. And I feel a difference. I definitely feel a difference. So it's the beautiful thing about New York. There's so many parks. There's so many grassy areas. So walk to a place where your phone doesn't work so well.
Yeah, I like that. It is sometimes hard to get the sunlight in certain months. I mean, we've got Juve. I don't know if you've used Juve before, the red light. I mean, that's something that I feel can help in certain areas when it comes to different light frequencies that we might be missing. So yeah, that's probably an idea, but I do think getting out in the actual sun is amazing, and grounding and getting your feet in some grass and being away from the Wi-Fi. That sounds amazing. What else have we got, guys? I'm trying to pick your brains now.
Well, I would add to that, this isn't a free biohack, but if you are in the city and it's winter and you can't get outside in the sunshine, is either a red light like the Juve device. So red light is great because it's mimicking the sunrise and sunset especially. And we know it's great for reducing inflammation and pain in the body. But also even like a desktop sunlight lamp. So that's going to mimic a little bit more of the sun, especially getting into your eyes, help you wake up in the morning. And then we also have something called the human charger, which it looks like a little iPod, like the old school iPod. And it has these headphones you put or earbuds you put in your ears. It shines bright light into your ears, into your brain. So it's very similar to the signal that we get for cortisol when we go outside in the sun. Ooh. So that's another biohack for you city folks.
That's cool. So what is it called?
The human charger.
Human charger. Okay.
I like the name.
Yeah.
Charges you up in the morning.
It's really amazing for gray, rainy days, or in the winter when the sun doesn't come up as early. If you're up early, I guess just to come back to the vitamin D talk. I mean, you have to know these windows of opportunity, and if you're above the 37th parallel, which we are in New York, in the wintertime, you can't get adequate vitamin D from the sun. So it may be better for you to take it in a supplement form. But again, always come back to your personal levels and know what the need is. I wouldn't recommend for anyone to walk into a supplement store and just pick one off the shelf. Like, what are we supplementing? What are we supporting in your own body? There's also the thought that, if you store enough in the summertime, and Renee, you can chime in on your opinion on this, but if you store enough and synthesize enough in the summer, hopefully our bodies have evolved enough to hold on to that through the winter. So depending on, again, your stress bucket, what other inputs are coming at you, I think we should be able to hold on to those levels through the winter. But again, if you deal with seasonal affective disorder, certainly if there's any gut health issues, supplementation can be really helpful. But then in the summertime, knowing that window, you can't get vitamin D first thing in the morning, but morning sunshine is great for circadian rhythm.
Yes.
So like there's different times of the day where light has different benefits.
Absolutely.
So just understanding those timelines.
Yeah. And a really great app for that's totally free is D-Minder. It's DMINDER. I recommend everyone download that app because it'll tell you if you can get vitamin D. It'll measure based off of where you are. You can input, how many clouds are in the sky, how much coverage that day, how much clothing you're wearing, 50% to 80% skin clothing. And then it'll estimate about how much vitamin D you're getting. So I would say use that so you can see, because New York is very different than Vegas. We're right below the 37th parallel here in Vegas. So we can get vitamin D pretty much all year, but obviously the window will, get wider in the summer and more narrow in the winter. And then test your vitamin D. I think every 3 months is great.
Right.
It's such an easy blood test. If your doctor won't order it, you can go online and order it yourself, or have a practitioner order it, a holistic health practitioner. Good to know. And yeah, Lauren, I think I stopped taking vitamin D about a year ago, and my vitamin D has stayed up. So maybe I am storing it from the summer, or maybe it is just living in the sunny desert.
Yeah.
Because of your rooftop. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Much easier out here. But yeah, test, don't guess, because it seems crazy, but it is possible to have too much vitamin D. It is possible.
Okay.
It's probably rare in New York City, but just test.
Definitely rare here. I think a lot of people are deficient, but I think what I'm getting from you guys is that, things are individual. We do need to look at like testing for things and just seeing what's going on with, each person. Right. And I think it also comes into tapping into our intuition a little bit as well. I do think it's important to exercise that a little bit. So if I can just add that in there, I definitely feel like, we can be told, get this supplement or try this or try that. But it's also about checking in with ourselves too, isn't it? Just sort of, how is this working for me? And is this something I can fit into my day? And, how am I reacting to this? So, and starting simple. So like when you start working with people for the first time, and I know like people get a lot of benefits from listening, I'm sure, just to your podcast, because you have so many tips and you talk through things and, like I definitely recommend anyone who's watching this to jump on and find the Biohacker Babes podcast, because these guys have so many different areas that they talk about, and they deep dive on this and that. And it's really interesting because, you can really pick things up that might be just relevant to you at that particular time, or you can go through and search for some stuff they've spoken about before and just pick up on some of the information and education that they're trying to share. Because with this information, it can really help to hack our way through some of these really long health journeys. Like sometimes it just takes a really long time to find things that are going to work and to feel better. And I'm sure part of your motivation has got to be in sharing this, ladies, has got to be that you want to see people well and, thriving and able to get some results quicker if they find there's something that's not working for them, or, it's not going well in their body, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in 2022, we have to do a lot more to stay healthy than, our previous generations, maybe even 100 years ago. Like we can't just stay active and eat a clean diet. Like Lauren was saying, like New York City, it's super toxic. I mean, most places in the world are super toxic now. We're just exposed to a lot more. We're under a lot more stress. So that's where the biohacking comes in, because we do have to do a lot more things. So 100 years ago, maybe you didn't need to be a biohacker, but here we are in 2022. I think we do need to do that. And for anyone that is on a long health journey, just be patient, stay curious, ask questions. I mean, Lauren and I both went through our own struggles. I actually had chronic fatigue syndrome when I was 23. Traditional medicine had no idea why. No one could figure it out. That's part of why I became a biohacker, because I had to keep asking questions.
Yes.
And just know that you're not going to overcome any health issue overnight. Like if you've been eating crap for 20 years, don't think that like a 5-day juice cleanse is going to solve everything.
Thank you.
It takes time.
Yes. And the same thing with bones. Like it's something that starts depleting over a period of time. And like, if our bones are at their best by, maybe 30, and everything declines from there, and maybe you're in your 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s or older, and, you want to make some changes, we need to be patient, right? We've got to look at how we can invest in our bodies and give it time to reverse some of the damage that has happened. And, it happens, as you said, with juice cleansing. It's like, yes, we can clean up and mop up some toxins and get the body on the right track to be healing itself. But we do need to be patient, and there may need to be more than one, week that we're eating well or juicing or, putting in these micronutrients and stuff. So I'm really glad you said that, because it is about having patience with ourselves and not looking for that quick fix that's going to immediately just be that magic pill, because there's going to be side effects to that magic pill. I'm sure of it. So it's like,
Yep.
yes, and having a balance is going to come from being kinder to ourselves and making time for things and not rushing past the things that are important. So I love when I see you ladies like out there and doing taking the time in the morning, like doing the basics of like going for a walk and being with the dog, and just taking some time to breathe and putting our feet in the grass. It seems like really basic stuff, but we don't realize how deep that goes in our bodies and in our minds and in our hearts, our emotions, our everything that we need. So I'm really glad that you're sharing that. And if anyone was to try to find you, I'm sure they can find you on the Biohacker Babes podcast, right? But they can also reach you through Instagram. I know you guys are pretty active there, and that you do get a few questions and follow up, I guess, messages to sort of help with different ideas. And I know Lauren works one-on-one a lot. You've got a lot of stuff going on. You've been doing some work with glucose levels and helping people one-on-one with that too, Lauren. Is that right? Do you want to sneak anything in about how people can work with you one-on-one? I know we've got a little bit of time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Renee and I both, that's primarily what we do, is one-on-one coaching. Renee can talk about herself, but she's a Ben Greenfield coach. And I currently am doing a lot of glucose coaching. So if you've heard of a continuous glucose monitor, which has historically been used for diabetics, but now there is this trend, of course, towards prevention, which is really important. But now CGMs are becoming accessible for a non-diabetic population. So
Yes.
a healthy population to look at glucose dysregulation, because it's so prevalent. It is just insane how much excess energy we're taking in. And not only is it helping us to look at what our food is doing to us, so we can personalize and make small changes to make our food work for us with our physiology, but it's also really revealing to see what stress is doing to affect us, what exercise is doing to affect us, what's happening while you're sleeping.
Yes.
Data is just so powerful. As you know from OsteoStrong, sometimes we're just so detached from our own intuition. And that's for many reasons. I think it can go all the way back to childhood, not just from trauma. And it doesn't have to be like big T trauma, but we all have trauma in our own ways, but also just cultural conditioning around just sort of like the duality of the educational system, like right, wrong, everything's one or the other. And we're not really taught like a creative orientation, which takes us into our intuitive process. So
we're told to suck it up in Australia, because I'm Australian. It's like, just suck it up and just keep going, that kind of thing.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you don't get to cry, you don't get to just keep moving, like and it's not okay to feel things, so I get a lot of people shut down when we're not allowed to feel things, or it's we're made to feel shame around certain feelings. So 100% we're going to be shut down for sure. So
yeah, the shame, especially for women. I mean, I think it's probably important to teach a young child to be independent and to fend for themselves and be sovereign, but also we should be able to feel our feelings and not apologize like if we cry to someone.
Right.
Someone said that to me one time, like, why are we apologizing for crying, but we don't apologize for laughing? Like if you're in the middle of a conversation and someone starts crying, what do? Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm crying.
Yeah.
Why? You don't apologize if you laugh or, have any other emotion. So
right.
Anyways, rabbit hole about intuition, but we're so detached from it that we don't even know what's good for us. And so data quantification can be a great way to bring us back into that, to learn about how, are our symptoms responding? How can we go a little bit deeper there? How can we learn to personalize? Because that's what it is. There's no one size fits all. So yeah, that all goes to say that the glucose coaching is a really amazing, like revealing way to look into the body and to find your unique roadmap, because it's going to be different. Like Renee and I eat differently. We exercise differently. We even have different biohacking preferences.
Yes.
And that's important to acknowledge.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, thank you, Lauren. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So we do both one-on-one coaching, but the podcast is where we're spending a lot of our focus, because we just really care about educating and empowering everyone. I'll just say everyone broadly,
Yeah.
because there are so many tools and strategies, and we don't necessarily have the answers, but we can share with you resources and strategies so you can find your own roadmap. And of course, working with us in health coaching, we can guide you and lay everything out, because it's just one giant puzzle piece. And sometimes you really do need help to lay out that puzzle. But so many free things, like you said, so many ways you can test and collect your own data. So we're just trying to share those resources and strategies through the podcast.
Yeah, I love that. And what's your favorite thing, Renee, when you're working? Like, well, I mean, I know you do one-on-one stuff, but even just with the podcast, like, what's your favorite thing that you like about, doing the podcast that you guys have created? Because I know you're very passionate about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess selfishly, what I love a lot is that we get to talk to so many experts in the field. I mean, we talk about, we get to interview people about, I mean, everything from hormones to sleep optimization to data quantification and psychedelics and plant medicine. I mean, it's really amazing how many people we get to interview. But something I really like doing with clients is kind of like what Lauren said, is helping them look through the data.
Right.
And to tune into what their body is really trying to tell them to get them along that health journey a little bit faster. Yeah. So if you're sitting at home listening to this and you're like, I don't think I'm a biohacker, I don't have any data to collect, just pick one way to collect data. Maybe it's an Oura ring, or maybe it's a CGM, something like that. Just start with one thing and start to optimize different lifestyle practices based off of that one piece of data. I think when you can see the data change, you'll be more empowered and motivated to stay on that healthy journey. Like the CGM, you see that glucose spike after your sushi dinner, you're always going to remember that. That's just an example. Or your Oura ring data the morning after you have too many cocktails out with your friends, you're going to remember that, right? So just seeing these little things, I think, will just empower you and motivate you to stay on that health journey and to just enjoy the journey.
Yeah. Well, it solidifies things in your mind, doesn't it? Like, you're like, oh, it's so easy. And I think I come across this a lot with OsteoStrong too. Like, it's so easy to ignore things that we can't physically see. We're talking about bones. And so, yes, we've got the data, and yes, we track things. And yes, we're looking at when people will reach their rapid growth trigger or their growth trigger to make sure that the osteoblast cells are activated. And yes, we see that. But it doesn't always feel that there's a significant change. It's not like you feel like pain or some kind of recovery feeling, that you might be going through with sore muscles and things like that after a session with us, and it's only like 10 minutes. So it's like, yes, we're collecting data, and we're putting energy into a machine, but it's more like you've got to wait for the next scan to really give you the exact results. So it's like there's some time that goes in between starting and then checking on how things are going. And so it's about staying, doing the research, feeling comfortable you've made the right decision in whichever pathway it is that you've chosen, and making it consistent, sticking to it, giving your body time, And so, when you can't see it, it's hard to stay motivated sometimes. Mm-hmm. But then when you see it, it's like, oh my gosh, people come in with their scans and like, they're so excited. They're like, I'm so glad that I did this. And I missed a few weeks because I went on holidays, but wow, it's, I'm so happy that, things have changed. And when you go from -3, -4 in these DEXA scans for osteoporosis, and you're down to the -1s, or you're sitting at a 0 where you're back to healthy bones of a 30-year-old, and you might be someone who's 40, 50, 78, you then turn around and go, wow, this really works. So I think tracking things does matter. It's something important. But I also think some of the other things you guys have been talking about with I think it's being consistent and having something that works for you, but it's just being patient as well, being patient with the body and patient with the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe tracking small changes, sometimes it's we might not exactly know the data for a period of time, but we can kind of look at, I do notice that I have a little bit less pain in my lower back, or I'm finding that I can walk a little longer, and, it's feeling more comfortable to do certain things, or I'm sleeping a little better, Or my favorite is, I can carry more shopping home. I feel
Yes.
The
Always
one
important.
trip from the grocery store. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's not like, I mean, and in New York, again, a lot of us, carrying bags and bits and pieces rather than
Always.
yeah,
Bag ladies.
yeah. So it's like, if you can feel strong after that, and it doesn't impact you in a negative way where you're feeling really sore for days in just carrying something, that's a really great positive. So maybe it is keeping track of these little things that end up being really big, in the positive. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Love
Cool.
it.
Well, any last thoughts? Because we're going to finish, but I'm so happy that you guys were able to make the time to come on. And I really do love what you're doing. I think that, the importance of the things that you're sharing is huge. And I think a lot of people are getting things from this and they're feeling not so alone, like they've got different journeys. They're trying to just find the pathway, what's right for me. They're maybe overwhelmed with so many voices and so many options. And what I love about what you are offering is you're giving people more resources. You're going a little deeper into some of the research, on behalf of, people that are listening, and then they can take it to the next level. So they don't feel so overwhelmed to just start from scratch. They can start from what you've tried, or, some of the results that you're seeing, or, some of the data, and even just starting, like with what you said, like starting with just one thing that collects data, and seeing what that looks like and feels like for you, and then the tweaks that you can do to become your own biohacker. So thank you so much for sharing that. And is there any last takeaways that we can squeeze out of you? One last thing to keep us strong? Anything?
I will give one final piece of advice.
Okay.
For bone health, I would say make sure you're filtering your water, like Lauren briefly mentioned in the beginning. You're hopefully drinking water every day, right? Staying hydrated, adding the minerals, but make sure you have a good filter, something that's hopefully taking out at least fluoride, especially when we're talking about bone health. We know that fluoride is really damaging to our bones. Of course, a lot of people are getting fluoride in their toothpaste and mouth rinse, which I recommend cutting that out. But if you're drinking fluoridated water, it's going to be really harmful for your bones. So number one thing, make sure you're filtering your water. That's your homework.
Thank you. That's really, really great. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'll just add on, if you are running into trouble with bone health, say you're going to OsteoStrong and you're putting in the work, you're being really consistent and you're still not seeing results, always continue to be curious and just step back and see, is there inflammation happening in the body? Is there leaky gut? Is there something else, some kind of toxic exposure that we're not aware of? Because if the body is distracted with some pathogen or inflammatory input, it's not going to be concerned with strong bones. So always step back and just consider other possibilities. Renee and I run into this all the time. We're like, we think we have a handle on something, and then a new challenge presents. It's like, oh, right. Of course, I should have known. Like, do not discount any possibility, especially because we're dynamic. We change from day to day, year to year. Like, nothing is ever static. So just continue to be curious, like, for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I love that. You guys are the solutions babes. I love it.
I love it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Well, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. I think that there's so much that we can take away from this, and just even that last little squeezed out tip that I got from you has just proven it's just an example of what you can learn from both Renee and Lauren with their podcast, with the Biohacker Babes podcast. And I honestly think that it's going to be a great place that you can go to learn more, get to know them, and just delve deeper into something that might interest you and get you curious. And thank you so, so much for sharing that, because I think it's going to be really helpful for the people that are following us and, learning about bone health and what they can do to strengthen. Those tips will just be phenomenal. So thank you once again. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And we hope to have you back at some stage soon to pull out more of those solutions from those brains you got there, ladies.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Hosting us. This is so much fun. We appreciate you.
Yeah, awesome. Would love to do it again.
All right. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you too. Thank you. And for everyone else who's watching, find these ladies, and you definitely get onto Instagram and like them, and see what you can find out for yourself with their beautiful podcast.